Okay, so let me quickly recap uh, the problems, and I'm going to take this opportunity to discuss some concepts that I didn't get time to discuss during our regular class session. So let's start with problem number 1. Problem number 1 gives you 4 matrices, and it's asking that which of these matrices have positive eigenvalues. How did you solve this problem? Anyone? My online students, you are welcome to use the chat window. So for the first problem, when would the matrix have both positive eigenvalues? Symmetric, okay, or the interesting condition that you want to see if the determinant is positive. For the first matrix, so we are talking about problem 1. So there are 4 matrices. If you look at matrix S1, the determinant is negative. Matrix S2, the determinant is negative. And what you want to do is, if you look at matrix S4, it's 1, 10, 10, 101. So if you look at 1 times 101, that is greater than 10 multiplied by 10. So this is the only matrix which has positive eigenvalues. Is that the answer you got? You can verify that with your MATLAB script, or since it's a 2 by 2 matrix, you know how to find the eigenvalues. You would say 1 minus lambda 1. So actually 1 minus lambda multiplied by 101 minus lambda minus 10 multiplied by 10. Equate this equation to 0, and then it will give you the values of 2 values of lambda, and then you will notice that these 2 values are positive. But the condition that you can specify is this. If you look at other problems, this condition does not get satisfied. Next problem. Yeah. I did some other method like X transpose Sx would be greater than 0. That's fine. X transpose Sx is greater than 0. That would work too. Yeah, and actually that brings an important question. So X transpose Ax. What does this matrix mean? This is called as the quadratic form. And when the quadratic form is positive for all possible values of x's, that matrix is positive. Now let me give you an example. Say if I have a matrix 1, 2, 0, 0. Do you agree with me that the eigenvalues for this matrix are 1 and 2? Do you agree with me? Now, everyone understands the eigenvalue for this matrix are 1 and 2? Yes or no? Okay, good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that with an X transpose, and this is going to be X1, X2, X1, X2, first row, first column, second row, first column. Then I multiply from the left, and can you see that finally, and I need to write this down very clearly, one row, two columns, two row, two columns, then two row, one column. So this gives me a two row, one column, and this gives me finally my answer is one row, one column. So it is actually a scalar quantity. And when you perform this multiplication, you're gonna have 1 x1 square plus 2 x2 square. Do you agree with me? Now, can you see that no matter what is the value of x1 and x2, my quadratic form is always going to be positive because that matrix is positive. Everyone understood this? Now, quadratic form, this is an important concept because if you think about it, this can be thought as an energy function. So just in this case, just imagine if x1 is your displacement and x2 is your velocity. So you would have something like kx square multiplied by mx dot square. So first term corresponds to the potential energy. Second term corresponds to the kinetic energy. So the quadratic forms are super duper important. Now the question comes is what happens when you have a fully populated matrix? And let me take an example of a fully populated matrix. Let's take the same example, 1, 10, 10, 101. Now I would treat x1, x2, and again x1, x2. First row, first column. So now the first row, first column is gonna give me x1 plus x2, which is 10 times x2. Second row, first column is gonna give me 10 times x1 plus 101 times x2. This guy needs to be multiplied with x1, x2. Everyone understands matrix multiplication here? Then when I multiply this is going to become x1 square plus 10 x1 x2 plus then so 10 x1 x2, then I will have 10 x1 x2 plus 101 x2 square. Do you agree with me? So x1 multiplied by x1 plus 10 x2 plus x2 multiplied by 10 x1 plus 101 x2. Do you agree with me? This is what I get. Now the key observation here is this. No matter whether my x1 is positive or negative, x1 square is always going to be positive. Do you agree with me? No matter whether my x2 is positive or negative, x2 square is always going to be positive. Now the key question here is, what happens when your x1 and x2s are different? If x1 is positive or x2 is negative, what you can do is you can try different combinations of x1, x2. Say x1 is equal to 0, x2 is equal to positive. x1 is equal to 0, x2 is equal to negative. x2 is equal to 0, x1 is equal to positive, and so on. And just make sure that this quantity is always greater than 0. If that is the case, then the matrix is a positive definite matrix. Positive definite matrix will always have positive eigenvalues. My online students, did you understand this? And this is a super duper important concept, which is many a times when we try to study the stability of a system, we try to find out this quadratic form. What do I mean by that? And this is a very practical application. Consider that you have a spring mass system. Okay, I'm gonna find out the kinetic energy of the spring. I'm gonna find out the potential energy of the spring and the kinetic energy of the mass. So m x dot square. Believe it or not, this guy is nothing but this. X dot x dot. And there is a half term here that is floating around. So you would observe that this actually quadratic form is another way of expressing energy of the system. No. So basically, what happens is, so basically, all right. So basically, your V. So is this. What you do actually? What happens is you do V. Okay, V is the energy. Now, to find out whether this, so the question here is whether the system is stable or unstable. To determine whether the system is stable or unstable, what we do is we find out the rate of change of energy. So what we do is we take the derivative of energy. And if the derivative of energy, there are three cases that are possible. The derivative of energy is 0, which means the energy is neither changing, so it is not increasing or decreasing. So the system is simply stable. Second case that is possible is d by dt of energy is less than 0, which means the energy is decreasing. So system started with some energy and energy decrease. What would happen when the system energy decreases? System goes to rest. So system becomes asymptotically stable. So this is the first case wherein the system is simply stable. In the second case, system becomes asymptotically stable. And now the question is, when would the system become unstable? So if you were to take the rate of change of energy, and if that is positive, then the system would become unstable. So what if you think about it, like there is a child on the swing and you start pushing the child in resonance. So the swing, the amplitude of swing increases. Why does it increase? Because by pushing at the right time, you are injecting energy into the system. So the system is becoming unstable. Now that is what is so shown over here. If you want to find out the eigenvalue of the matrix that I have shown over there, K00M2, the eigenvalues are K and M. Both of those are positive, and they will be positive because spring stiffness, spring is a physical quantity, mass is a physical quantity. You cannot be negative. However, if you go further, if you take the derivative of whole that scalar equation, then you will notice the energy definition, and then that will tell you whether the system is stable or unstable. The other question about the eigenvalues, since you asked, if you have a system x dot is equal to ax, this system is different than the system I showed earlier. This system is different than the system I showed earlier. If I want to write this spring mass system, so this is mass M, this is stiffness K, and my X is the displacement small x and velocity x dot. So x comma x dot. Now, if I want to write down this equation, which is mx double dot plus kx is equal to 0. If I want to write down this equation in this form, this will look like, and even if you don't follow this, that's totally okay, because the key point that I want to talk about is not setting up the equation, but the eigenvalues of matrix A. Okay. D by dt is equal to 0, 1 minus k by m 0 x x dot. So this equation can be written as this equation, and it's not this is not the focus of the discussion, like how to convert the second order equation into the first order equation. But the point that I'm trying to make here is, if you find eigenvalues of this matrix, these are purely imaginary. These are purely imaginary. And these purely imaginary eigenvalues indicate that that system has an oscillatory behavior. It's basically oscillating. And what it means is now this is very important. It means the derivative of energy function is 0. The system energy does not increase or decrease. So that is where, now if you add a damping term here, then what happens here? You are gonna get another quantity which is minus c, and then you will notice that the eigenvalues will have negative real part, which means the energy will keep on decreasing. For some reason, if the value of c is positive, then it is called as the negative damping, and then the system eigenvalues become positive. So the eigenvalue analysis is correct when you have the differential equation of motion. But if you were to perform the eigenvalue analysis over here, the eigenvalues of that matrix, that is a positive definite matrix, its eigenvalues will be positive. That is to answer your question. All right, I digressed a little bit. Paraboloid. So forbiddance. Okay. All right. So that being said, that gives me the next question. For second problem, for which number B and C are the matrices positive definite? So with all the information that I gave you so far, you should be able to tell me for what values of B and C the matrices are positive definite. So here is what you will do. So S is given as 1, B, B9. Do you agree with me? What is the condition for positive definite? The condition for positive definite is X transpose Sx has to be greater than 0 all the time. So you would have x1, x2, 1, b, b9, x1, x2, and then you're gonna get an equation. Do you agree with me? This is gonna look like x1, x2, so it's gonna be 1, so x1 plus bx2, bx1 plus 9x2. This equation is going to look like x1 square plus b x2 x1 plus then you're going to have b x1 x2 plus 9 x2 square. And you want to make sure, so what would be the value of b for that? So I'll give you a simple hint. You have an equation x1 plus 2b x1 x2 9x2 square, right? If value of b is 0, would the matrix be positive definite? Yes, no matter what is the value of a x1 and x2, the matrix will be positive definite. What happens if value of b is, so let's start. So this equation is going to become x1 square minus 2b x1 x2 plus 9x2 square. So now you have to tell me, when b is equal to 0, no matter what is the value of x1 and x2, that equation will be positive definite. What happens when the value of b is minus 1? If value of b is minus 1, your equation is going to become x1 square plus 2x1 x2 plus x2 square. Do you agree with me? Yeah.
So the coefficient for the x1 x2 is positive 2.
X1 x2 is, yeah, sorry, I made a mistake. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So then this is the condition. Now what you can do is, the other way is, you can try this, or what you can do is you can decompose, or you can split this system into L, D, L transpose. And actually give me a second, I'll actually explain this to you in just a second. So this is one way of finding out the values of B. The other approach is you can actually split this matrix into something like 1, 0, B, 1, 1, 0, 0, 9 minus B square. One, B, 0, 1. So this is L, this is D matrix, this is L transpose. And then what you need to make sure that your D matrix is positive definite. So B minus B square has to be greater than 0. which means for B, you have solution plus minus 3. So that means your B value should be between minus 3, B plus 3. So if you want to solve this problem using LD, L transpose decomposition, you can solve this problem like this. So, did anyone solve this problem using MATLAB? Did you solve this? Did you solve the LD, L transpose, or did you solve it by?
So I will do the determinant. I will acquire determinant is greater than 0.
Okay. But yeah, so even though the problem is asking you for LD, L transpose, if you solve it by determinant, or if you solve it by the technique just I showed you here, it should be okay. But for my own satisfaction, let me solve one more problem. So the second question is S is equal to 2, 4, 4, and C. So what needs to happen when you do the decomposition, either by hand or using MATLAB? And MATLAB can do this, by the way. Try MATLAB symbolic 0, 0, C minus 8, 1, 2, 0, 1. So your value of C has to be greater than 8 for the positive definiteness. And the last part is the matrix S, C, B, B, C, and the L matrix for this is 1 minus P by C, 0, 1, and the D matrix is C, 0, 0, C minus P by C. And the condition here is C has to be greater than 0, C minus B by C to be greater than 0. So B square, so B square has to be, B is less than C square. So B, so this is a condition that you need to obtain for problem 2. Let me look at next problem, problem 3. In problem 3, you have to find out the numbers C and D so that they are positive definite. And then for determination, what you need to do is I'll solve one problem, and then you can solve the second one. So you have to find out the successive determinants. So the first matrix determinant is this. So C is a determinant of first matrix. Look at the second matrix. The second matrix is going to be determinant C square minus, everyone knows how to find determinant, right? So c square minus 1 square. And the last determinant, once you find the determinant, is first column multiplied by the cross product of the two other columns, and so on. So you would do c square c minus 1 square c plus 2 square. So these are the conditions for positive definiteness. Everyone understood that we need to find out the determinant of the first matrix. That first matrix is just C. You have to find out the determinant of the second matrix, which is C1, 1C. And then you have to find out the determinant of all 3 by 3 matrix, which is C11, 1C1, and 11C. And then that gives you the conditions for positive definiteness. Everyone understood this problem? So the next problem is on the determination of Hessian. Did anyone get this problem right? Solving Hessian. But before I solve this problem, I want to talk about something very important. So if you have a function, that function is given as f of x. So I'm going to say y is equal to f of x. How would I find out the derivative? The derivative is something like dy by dx is equal to something like df by dx. This can also be written as f prime. Everyone understood this? Now, if I were to write this equation something like this, if I were to write this equation, y is equal to f of x, I write y over here, or if so, I write y over here and x over here. This function is f of x. So if you are at this point, this is point number 1, and you want to find out what is the value at point number 2, you can find out y2 is equal to y1 plus. You can make an assumption that for small distances, the distance between 1 and 2 is a straight line, and you can say df by dx multiplied by x2 minus x1. So this equation is nothing but y1 plus slope multiplied by delta x. Do you agree with me? Now, if I want to change this approximation from 0, my y1 value would be whatever is the value at 0. Do you agree with me? This is nothing but some called as the Taylor series expansion, wherein we are just retaining the first derivative of the Taylor series. Now, if I want to increase this, actually, if I want to increase the fidelity of this expression, or if I want to make this equation more accurate, I can do it something like this: y1 plus df dx multiplied by delta x plus d2f dx square multiplied by delta x square. What happened? I added the higher order term, and that made that approximation a little bit more accurate. I can keep on doing this and then I can express the function as a series of the derivatives, and that is nothing but the Taylor series approximation. Now, how do I write this for a series? So if you have a series, and I'm going to call this z, which is the function of x and y. Now z is the dependent variable, x and y are independent variables. Let's look at the basics. The basics is slope multiplied by, it is very important, slope multiplied by change in the independent variable. You agree with me? What is the equation for the rise basically y2? That equation fundamentally means the slope multiplied by change in the independent variable. Now here there are two independent variables. So do you agree with me? To find the total change in z, I need to account for change because of x and change because of y. Do you agree with me? So can I write this down something like this? I would say df by dx multiplied by change in the x independent variable plus df dy multiplied by change in the y independent variable. Do you agree with me? This is the Taylor series expansion when your function is dependent on two independent variables. Everyone understood this? But here, my independent variable is only a first order approximation. So for an example, I'm taking the derivative only once. So now let me extend this case. And if you are in my robotics class, you would understand this. If you have a function f1, if you have a function f2, f1, f1, I can write this equation something like df2 dx delta x plus df2 dy delta y. Do you agree with me? So I have a function, first function f1. f1 depends on, this is super important, so pay attention, because from here I'm going to show you the Jacobian, and from Jacobian we'll derive the Hessian, and with Hessian we can solve the problem that we are going to solve. But try to understand what is happening here is function is represented as the slope multiplied by the change in the independent variable. Now, when the function is depending on two or more independent variables, you need to take the derivative with respect to that independent variable and multiplied by the change in that independent variable. Everyone understood this? That's why the function is f1. I'm taking the derivative with x, df by dx, and multiplying by delta x. Delta x is a change in the x. Do you agree with me? Plus, since that f is now dependent on x and y, I need to do the same thing for y. df1 by dy multiplied by delta y. You agree with me? Consider that you have another function, f2. Then that f2, I have to repeat the same process. f2 with respect to delta x multiplied by delta y. Delta f2 by delta dy multiplied by delta y. Everyone understood this? Okay. Now this is where the linear algebra meets this. So can I write this equation down? f1 f2 is equal to delta f1 delta x delta f1 delta y delta f2 delta x delta f2 delta y multiplied by delta x delta y. Are you with me? What is this? This is the change in the independent variable, right? This is called as Jacobian. And what is this? This is change in dependent variable. If you recollect, in today's class, in robotics class, we did the exact same thing. Px dot py dot is equal to a Jacobian multiplied by theta 1 dot and theta 2 dot. So remember this. This is called as the Jacobian, and Jacobian is super important because the eigenvalues of the Jacobian exactly tell you whether the function is bounded or unbounded or what is going on. So remember this. Now what I want to do is, I want to do the exact same thing what I did here. So Jacobian, this guy essentially is the Jacobian. This guy is called as the Hessian. So if you look at the Hessian is, now I'm gonna extend this thing to 2 dimensions. So this guy becomes something like this. H is equal to So how do I find out the Hessian? So let me work out one problem. So my function f1 is 14 x4 plus x square y plus y square. So I'm going to take the partial derivative with respect to x. When I take the partial derivative with respect to x, what this means is y is equal to constant. Y is equal to constant. So this becomes 4 by 4 x to the power 3 plus 2 x y plus 0. Do you agree with me? Then the second derivative, again y is equal to 0. This is going to become 3x square minus, so plus 2y plus 0. Do you agree with me? Next thing, I'm gonna find delta f by delta y. So first term will be 0, second term will be x square, third term would be 2y, because when I take the partial, x has to be treated as constant. Sorry, it should be treated as constant. Then plus 2. So now what you can do is you can plug in these values in your Hessian matrix. So this is 3x square plus 2y. Then this is x square. Yeah, it's x square. And then this guy is basically 2. And now here you can actually take df by dy and do it with dx, and this will become 2x. So this becomes the Hessian. Everyone understood this? Now, why Hessian is super important? These problems, what you are solving, they are kind of leading us to the next part, which is actually the crux of this course, which is related to neural networks and machine learning. So you have an objective function. So the objective function that is given to us is of the form 1 4 x to the power 4 x square y plus y square. Finding an optimal or finding the solution that is optimal is finding the minima. So first we find the extrema. How do we find the extrema? We find the Jacobian and equate that Jacobian is equal to 0. So when the Jacobian is 0, which means the first derivative is equal to 0, that is the condition for extrema. That extrema could be minima or it could be maxima. Then what we do is, the second condition is find out the second derivative and see if that second derivative is positive or negative. If that second derivative is negative, then is maxima. If second derivative is positive, then that's minimum. Everyone understood this? But now when you have the function which is dependent on not 1 but 2, not 1 but 2, then what do? You can find the Jacobian and then you have to find the Hessian. Everyone understood it? Yeah.
Just really quick with the bottom row, second column,
Yeah.
is it D?
Oh, yeah. No, I made a mistake here. This should be d2y square. You're absolutely right. Thanks for pointing that out. So this guy is not right. Hey, PowerPoint crashed. I hope the slide got saved. Nope, slide didn't save. But yeah, the second row, second column is actually this thing. So df, d2f, dx square, d2f, dx dy, d2f, dx dy, d2f, dy square. So that is what it is. So I made a mistake. So please correct that. Okay. So the next problem is you have to find out the saddle points. And to find the saddle points, what you need to do is you need to find the Jacobian and then find out the eigenvalues of Jacobian. And depending upon what the eigenvalues of the Jacobian are, you can find out whether it's a saddle or it's a center. Everyone clear about the next problem? So I'm sorry about the problem that we are looking at. So if you want to find out the saddle points, then what you need to do is you need to look at the actual values of those matrices. Next is an example problem, which is you are given a matrix A, and then you have to find out the singular value decomposition, which is problem 5. So what you need to do is you have to use the singular value decomposition. And for this matrix A, you need to find U sigma V transpose. You can use MATLAB to solve this problem. Did anyone solve this problem? Did you get the SVD? Yeah, okay, cool. The next problem is you have a rank 1 matrix and you have to find out the SVD. That again also a MATLAB problem. Problem 6. You have to find out the SVD and you can find out the SVD from the MATLAB. Okay, now let me ask you the next problem, which is find the closest rank approximation. Did anyone try the closest rank approximation problem? So the next problem is, so find rank 1 approximation, and the matrix is A 3 0 0 0 2 0 0 0 1. What? Three zero zero, and you have to find the rank 1 approximation in the Frobenius norm. Did anyone try this problem? How did you solve it in MATLAB? Using the norm. Oh, okay. What you use norm, and then what did you do? Did you get the matrix? Okay. Okay. So let me tell you what this. Yeah.
So basically, I did the SVD and took the first, basically the first.
First,
sigma,
yeah.
Represented the matrix
And what matrix did you get?
3 0 0 0 0 0 0 0.
3 0 0. So, okay. Hold on a second. So you let me okay. 0 0 0 0 0 0. Is this what you got? Actually, that's a very smart approach. So now, so let me tell you what this problem is super simple. Look at the matrix that is given 3 0 0 0 2 0 0 0 1. How many independent columns or independent row does this matrix have? 3. That's why we are getting norm as 3 and rank as 3. Do you agree with me? Can you see the rank of this matrix? Sorry, the rank of this matrix is 3. Now you want to do a rank 1 approximation. You can use the smart technique our friend used. You can do the SVD, singular value decomposition. What does singular value decomposition do? Singular value decomposition finds out the columns and rows and their respective weights. And then what you can do is you can just take the first column of U, first row of V, multiply with that weight, and you see what matrix you get. The matrix that you get is 3 0 0 0 0 0 0 0 1. That is a rank 1 approximation of this matrix. Does it make sense? Okay, I'll say that again. So let's take a step back. If you were to find the SVD of A, you agree with me, you are gonna find out U1, U2, U3. You would find sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3. Agreed? And you will find V1 transpose, V2 transpose, V3 transpose. Do you agree with me? This guy is a diagonal matrix. So diagonal matrix, whether you pre-multiply, you take inside the multiplication or you take outside the multiplication does not matter. So this equation can be written as sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3. And this will be U1 V transpose. So let me write this down something like this. Zeros U2 V2 transpose and U3 V3 transpose. So what that means is this matrix is dissected as sigma 1 U1 V transpose U1 transpose plus sigma 2 U2 V2 transpose plus sigma 3 U3 V3 transpose. So what does SVD do? SVD slices this matrix. So this is rank 1. This is rank 1. And this is rank 1. That's what he did. I solved the problem differently, but SVD will give you in a Fibonacci map. So that's correct. Everyone understood how to solve this problem. So this is the key takeaway what we studied so far. What does SVD do? SVD takes the matrix and slices and dices it into its principal components. What are those principal components? Principal components are nothing but a column vector and the row vector. Do you agree with me? And the SVD, sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 3, it indicates the relative weight on those column vectors. So if you have a column vector and if you have a row vector, if you multiply those, you are gonna get a matrix. Do you agree with me? If you have a column vector, if you have a row vector, you are gonna get a matrix. Are you with me or not? Okay. What would be the rank of that matrix? 1, because everything is constructed for only one column and one row. Do you agree with me? So rank cannot be greater than 1. But that rank 1 matrix is weighted by the singular value. And that singular value indicates how important that matrix is. So that's why singular value, that's all singular value does. Singular value decomposition is nothing but the Fourier decomposition on the matrix. Okay. Okay, then next problem is find the close rank approximation for in L2 norm for another vector. So again, you can try that, but that is actually tricky. So let me show you how that problem is attempted. A is equal to cosine theta sine theta minus sine theta cosine theta. Now please note this is an orthonormal matrix, which means the transpose is equal to inverse. If you are in my robotics class, you will see that this is nothing but the part of the rotation matrix that we are dealing with. So this matrix can be attempted, we can actually solve this to its Frobenius norms, which is and this is cosine. So that is given as, and you have to use Eckart-Young theorem for this. So A minus U1 sigma V transpose F is equal to square root minus 1. So now what you want to do is exactly the same thing. This guy comes from SVD. And then what you can do is you can actually perform the SVD and subtract that matrix from A. And then you can show that this guy is the closed, this A minus sigma V U sigma V1 transpose is the closest approximation. Did anyone try this problem or no? You try this? How did you attempt it? So did you use the formula that I showed you, Eckart formula? Did you do it, or you know how to do it, or you haven't done it? You did it in MATLAB? Okay, yeah, MATLAB would do it. Yeah, you solved it using symbolic computation? Okay, good. Okay. Next problem is you are given two matrices, and what you want to do is you want to find out S minus lambda M is equal multiplied by X is equal to 0. And this problem can be attempted. You can directly solve this problem in MATLAB. Did anyone solve this problem in MATLAB? Next problem, problem 9. Did anyone attempt it or no? You got the answer? Oh, good. How did you solve it using MATLAB? Okay, very good. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. And did you find the eigenvalues, eigenvectors or no?
Yes, not using
MATLAB, okay. Anyone else? Did you try? No, yes. When is this assignment due, by the way? Oh, so yeah, of course, we have a lot of time. And then already we know the solution. So it should be easier. Why attempt? I'm gonna stop giving you partial solutions to the problem. The idea of giving you some of these problems are not straightforward. They are difficult. But my intention of giving you the problem is, if you attempt it, then at least you will have opportunity to review some material in the book, and you can ask me, just like some of you did, ask me some intelligent questions, and then I should be able to give you some more information. But so please, yeah, attempt the problem. Yeah.
So I just did all by method S minus the eigenvalue. Well, it's all inside the determinant of S minus M I times eigenvalues.
Correct.
And then I just made it into, I didn't determine it, which gives you a quadratic equation.
Correct.
I did just negative b plus or minus the square root.
So since you solved the problem, I'm gonna give you the answer and see if your answer matches my answer. The answer to this problem is Is that what you got? Okay.
I got 10 plus or minus the square root of 4.
Okay, so I don't know if that is so
Because the matrix you're supposed to get is 5, the quadrant, the two values you get is 5 minus eigenvalue parentheses times 5 minus 4 eigenvalue parentheses minus 16, right? It's like that's the initial, yeah. That's the initial thing you get, doing the determinant of that.
correct.
You get, and the determinant of that is
Correct. And then the next problem when you solve your determinant h minus lambda I and equated to 0.
right.
So I think what you did this part,
Yeah, I did this part,
but you need to do this part as well.
which the h is represented by
H is represented by
the inverse of.
Yeah.
Okay.
so that equation.
Oh, okay, yeah, I think I did that part of that portion there.
Okay.
So I was able to get the top, I was able to get the top term right there, but I wasn't able to get the bottom.
you can use MATLAB and
That's what I did, yeah.
okay, online students. Yeah, good. You got the same answer. Awesome. Problem number 10. So how many of you tried problem number 10? Did you get the answer? Oh, wow. How did you solve the problem? Oh, come on.
Everything's in that level.
Okay, all right. So for the students, I'm very proud of you guys who worked on the problems. That is the reason why I gave extension so that you can compare your answers. But I'm a little bit worried about the students who have not solved the problems. Based on the information that I have given, you guys think that you'll be able to solve these problems? Online students, any questions? So problem number 10, I would just write this down, minimize minimize. So you need to yeah, you can solve. No question, all good, very good. Okay, so I hope all of you will be able to get 10 out of 10 points in this assignment. Each problem is worth 1 point. So just make sure that you show all the work. And at this point, let me ask you if there are any questions on the material that we have discussed so far. If you don't have any questions, here is my suggestion / request to you all that I want, if you have textbook, just please go to the textbook. There is tons and tons of information in the textbook, but it's mostly embedded in theory. So it might be a little boring. So I'm trying to spice things up with MATLAB examples. But as you pointed out, or as what's said to me, that just MATLAB wouldn't help. Some theory is important so that we can actually understand what's going on. So if you look at the material that we have discussed so far, we have covered chapter, the first part in detail, highlights of linear algebra. So all the 12 sections we have covered in detail. Part 2 is computation of large matrices, wherein I gave you the basis of numerical linear algebra, QR decomposition, basis transformation, and then we talked about the randomized linear algebra. I did not derive some of the theorems in the book, but we talked about randomized linear algebra in the context of applications. So MATLAB codes we talked about. And we used that randomized linear algebra to solve compressed sensing problem. That was the most important application that we did, which is actually part 3 from the textbook. Then I spent some time on gradient descent because that is going to come next, and that part is super important. If you recollect, the next part is on the spatial matrices, which that chapter talks about. Most important part in that chapter is the Fourier transform, Fourier series. So we spent a lot of time on one-dimensional Fourier series, two-dimensional Fourier series. Then there is something related to the graph. So remember the graph problem that we solved, and you solved similar graph problem in one of your homeworks. So finding the incidence matrices and then finding out the number of loops and all that stuff. So that part is covered in chapter 4. It shows the application of graph theory to Kirchhoff laws and other solving network problems that I did not discuss. But what I did is next part I'm gonna talk about, and we will start, is we want to get into the data sciences and the neural networks. So next part I'm going to talk about a little bit about probability and statistics, but I'm not going to talk about the basic concepts of probability and statistics. So let me just get a feel for it. Everyone comfortable with mean, standard deviation, probability distributions? Okay, so what I would do is, next part, I would start with the covariances matrices, joint probability, multivariate Gaussian and weighted least square, and Markov chains. Now, I cannot emphasize this less. When you are typing in your phone, please note when you are composing a text, have you noticed that your phone suggests the next possible word? How does it do it?
The databases which we have typed before, so it will suggest the words which we have typed already and produce words through it.
So that is absolutely correct. The mathematically that is called as the Markov chain, which means basically based on the past interaction, the algorithm understands how many times you produce or you type I, and what are the words you type before I. So it has created a probability matrix, which is called as basically it's a probability transition matrix. So it's called transition matrix, and as you are typing, that probability matrix is weighted, and basically based on the probability, it gives you a suggestion on what word probably you will be typing next. So that is the crux of Markov chains. Markov chains allow you to predict the future based on all the past data that you have. So I will talk a little bit in detail about the multivariate Gaussian Markov chains, and I will try to solve some problems using MATLAB because that is really fascinating. So you will realize that a lot of probability, so inference problems can be solved using Markov chains. How to do problem 10? Yeah, problem 10 can be done in MATLAB. So if you look at problem 10, so there is a question online, but I'm going to stop here, but I will answer the question. I'll stop recording, but I'll answer the question.